Welcome to my presentation. I can't actually. Hold on a sec. Okay, that's better. So, aside from learning that I can't actually do accents, while reading Dracula, I discovered that Transylvania is actually Ireland's dreaded doppelganger. As many of you might already know, authors of fictional works often derive parts of their stories from their own lives. For example, the Dursleys' home in Harry Potter very closely resembles J.K. Rowling's old home, and Shannon Messenger shares the same blonde hair and brown eyes as the protagonist in her story. And she also owns a bright blue elephant that wears a Hawaiian t-shirt. And the same goes for Bram Stoker. He also draws upon his own experiences while writing Dracula, and he uses religious symbols, stereotypes, and literature and folklore common to Ireland to transform Transylvania into an allegory for his homeland, the Emerald Isle. So, in order to fully understand Dracula and all of the symbolism behind it, we also have to understand the historical context in which it was written. As it turns out, Stoker lived in a period of struggle between Irish nationalists and British imperialists. The British were accused of destroying Irish culture and livelihood, and this contest was especially prominent in the religious sphere. So, Stoker uses religious symbols during Dracula to emphasize the conflict between English Protestantism and Roman Catholic Catholicism. One such symbol would be the crucifix. When Jonathan Harker is traveling to Dracula's castle for the first time, he encounters a Balkan woman who tries to give him one as a protection against evil. At first, Jonathan Harker is extremely uncomfortable, for as an English churchman, he has been taught to regard such things as in some measure idolatrous. Harker belongs to the Anglican faith, which uses unadorned crosses instead of crucifixes, which are Roman Catholic. However, the crucifix is used more and more often throughout the book in order to battle vampires such as Dracula. Another symbol would be the use of the host, which, as is introduced by Professor Van Helsing, a consecrated wafer used in Roman Catholic communion. And in Roman Catholicism, the bread becomes the blood and body of Jesus Christ, meaning that Jesus is truly present on the altar during communion, whereas it is only symbolic to Jonathan Harker and his Protestant friends. And the group's use of the wafer as something with literal power to defeat Dracula represents a conversion from English Protestantism to Irish Roman Catholicism. Stoker also alludes to the Emerald Isle by drawing parallels between the descriptions of the Transylvanian people, known as the Balkans, and common Irish stereotypes and cliches. For example, when Jonathan Harker is traveling to Dracula's castle, he remarks that the farther east you go, the more unpunctual are the trains, which doesn't seem super unusual. He's just making a comment about the Transylvanian transportation. However, Professor Joseph Valent of the University of Illinois states that the tardiness of trains was a byword among travelers to Ireland, which is Transylvania's counterpart in this story. I didn't know what a byword meant, so I looked that up, and Lexico says that a byword is a person or thing cited as a notorious and outstanding example or embodiment of something. So, Valent's use of this word suggests that Stoker's illustration of the Balkans is merely an extension of the ideas and cliches of those found in Stoker's own homeland. Another example of these stereotypes is found when Harker leaves Dracula's castle. Seeing from his violent demeanor that he was English, the station master gave him a ticket for the farthest station on the way thither that the train reached. So at that time, the English believed that the Irish were obsessed with bloodshed. So Stoker reverses the role by turning the English Harker into a foreign threat to the Balkans, who are the Irish people's allegorical counterpart. And throughout the novel, Dracula, a Transylvanian vampire, is trying to take over England, while Stoker experienced the British trying to take over Ireland. Though the roles are switched, the illusion strengthens the relationship between Ireland and Transylvania, as well as the strain that each of those countries experiences with England due to imperialistic influence. Ireland is known for being full of superstitions based on literature and folklore, much of which is referenced by Stoker during Dracula. For example, Jonathan sees a faint flickering blue flame while traveling to Castle Dracula, which may or may not mark the spot of buried treasure. And in Ireland, particularly in the British Isles, people have reported seeing the ghostly lights in the night forest and field known as will-o'-the-wisps, which will either lead one to their fortune or to a ghastly fate. Sound familiar? Irish is in the British Isles, so the use of this popular myth strengthens Ireland's connection with Transylvania. At one point, Professor Van Helsing mentions that Dracula got his education at a place called Scholomance. What is that? I also didn't know. And so it turns out, in a book called Transylvanian Superstitions, which was written in 1885, it describes Scholomance as a school supposed to exist somewhere in the heart of the mountains, and where all the secrets of nature, the language of animals, and all imaginable magic spells and charms are taught by the devil in person. In that same conversation, Professor Van Helsing also says that the Count is the bravest of the land beyond the forest. So, the land beyond the forest is actually a direct translation of the word Transylvania, as well as the title of another book written by Emily Gerard in 1888. She's the one who wrote Transylvanian Superstitions. And that book was also published 9 years before Dracula. Even though Emily Gerard was a Scottish author, not an Irish one, Stoker uses many of her works on Transylvania to connect any gaps between the cultures of Transylvania and his homeland of Ireland. Throughout the years, Dracula has been analyzed over and over and over again to take on different meanings at different times. It's been used as a horror story, a representation of inequality of 19th century gender roles, and a metaphor for sexual oppression and repression. However, the best way to understand the author's purpose is to understand the historical context in which the piece was written, such is the case with Dracula, where the use of religious devices, stereotypes, and legends are used to paint the picture of a nationalist battle between a good and an evil that can only be recognized when viewed as it was through the author's perspective. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Stay safe.